Hey, welcome back to another Bedrock Redstone tutorial. Today we're going to look at the inner mechanics of this item sorter that we just did a tutorial with Slack Lizard on his channel. I really hope you enjoyed that. I hope you build it in your world, and I hope through this video you can figure out how to do some more cool, new, impressive things with this item sorter. So let's look at some examples. Okay, so let's talk about what a multi-item sorter is. A multi-item sorter is a system that you place blocks in and fill up every chest in this sorter, and only the items that you have placed in this chest will end up in that chest. And the way it works is by locking all of the hoppers until they have a specific time window to try to put them into this chest, and then another specific time window where they can go down into the next chest. That in other systems gets handled in a zigzag pattern by powering one hopper, then releasing the other hopper, and running that on a clock. This system works a little bit differently, and we're going to go over how those differences were discovered and how you can use those and manipulate them in other redstone systems in this video. This is not going to be a block-for-block tutorial. We have a block-for-block tutorial to build this exact system on Slack Lizard's channel. And please go check that out. We worked really hard on it, and I spent a lot of time developing the system. I really hope that you enjoy it just as much as I do. So let's dive into some of the mechanics. First off, this system, you'll notice, uses an observer and a redstone torch. And if we drive over here, you'll see that I have a tower set up. So this one is the one that we built with Slack. This is one that we built with Slack but turned 90 degrees. Here is a slightly smaller version. It's only 8 wide, and it's paired up with a 3 wide sorter and then a couple of extra chests to show that you could make it wider if you wanted to. Over here is a giant monstrosity. This one is 14 chests tall, 9 wide. This is the biggest you can make this one without starting to get loss with the redstone signal strength up here. This one is size, so that way if you put a torch here, the very top you're at signal strength 1. So that's kind of the ways that you can put it together. There's a couple of other ways that we'll be covering to adjust these machines later on in the video. So here's where we start out. This is the most basic setup for this sorter. It's just an observer powering a redstone torch. If we look through here, we have chests that have all of the items that we'd want sorted. They could have a mix of items in there. It doesn't really matter. We're going to go through how this works. So to start with, if you put one item in here, we can start the process by doing a pull. That will do one pull of one item, and then it will not actually do the push because we didn't have enough ticks. If we go it again, it will push the item once, but there's no place for that to go. So we go down to the next one. Pull, push, and it doesn't have a place to go, so it stays in this hopper. We go down to the next one, and this is where things get interesting. We pull, it pulls it into this item, and then we haven't pushed it yet, but we do have a space for it. So if we toggle it again, it's in there. See? Red nether brick was at 6 and at 7. So if we do it again, it ends up in this chest. That is the core of how the system works. So the next step in designing this was to figure out how to trigger the observers in the right order. And that's where the rails came in. Rails are kind of an interesting block. They have a property that if you power it with any signal strength, it'll always do 9 items, or 9 rails. So that's how I kind of got started, is with a couple of rails and an observer watching the rail. Now the next thing that we needed to do was offset them. And originally I didn't design it like this. I designed it like this. Let's build up a little bit of a circuit here. So originally I didn't have any of the fancy rails or any of that stuff, and it was a lot less compact. Here I'm going to build you my original circuit. Okay, this was our original circuit that I learned how to program this big contraption. So to start with, we put an item up here just like we did before. That item will not, actually we'll go with one in the first chest. So first thing we do is put an item in here. And then that needs to go into this chest. So I toggled this switch once and then toggle it back. Oh, and then I toggle this switch once and toggle it back. And see, it goes in there. We can go through that a little bit slower. So we put a granite wall in here. And I start by toggling this switch. That brings it down to here. I toggle it the other way, and it brings it into here. I do the same with this one. Brings it down one, toggle it back, and it puts it into the chest. So this is where I started out. I didn't have the fancy rails, and I didn't have everything nice and densely compact. I worked on removing items from the system later, just trying to get it to function first. So let's go to the next circuit that I worked with. One more thing. This one is not terrifically tileable because if you look up here, it's signal strength 10. So you can't build a massive contraption like that because as you get taller, the number of modules that you can have sideways gets smaller. This one works by using rails. This next version works by using rails. The rails allow you to actually make it as 9 wide, independent of how tall you make it. So let's go build that up quick. So you might notice that I'm building kind of the same patterns, but I'm changing one item. And the reason that I'm not building up an entire sorting system at each of these steps is because I think that we need to focus on the small bits of this design so that you can understand and digest how it works. So this is just replacing the redstone lines from the last design with rails. And as you can see, the rails go out 9. They'll go out, and then on the 10th rail, they don't have a power signal anymore. So that is why we only can make these systems 9 wide. If you decide to build this design, which was my original less compacted design, it takes an extra row of observers, there is a benefit to that. So this keeps all of the clocking on that one side, so I can actually put an observer here and an observer here, and then I can start putting rails again immediately after. So this is 1 wide with a 1 gap every 9 blocks. So this is super tileable, but it's a little bit deeper. That's a choice for you. If you want to use more observers, make it a little bit deeper. You can make it very wide with just an occasional row of observers. So like this is a decorative row now. And that's easy to work with. It's much easier to tile this one than it is to tile that one. But it's a little bit more expensive, it's a little bit bigger. So let me actually build up what this looks like in a full item sorter. Let's just build it. Okay, so this one is a little bit different. It is nearly the same from this point forward. It is exactly the same. And then from this point backwards, it's the same item elevators we built in the last circuit. You just need to add an extra hopper here that goes straight back to cover the observer, and an extra observer in the middle. And then when you're doing the last steps in the tutorial, you need to do something a little bit different. You put the items, you put this so it's over top of your clock, which we'll build in a little bit. So you put this observer over top of your clock. And then this observer, we're just going to turn the repeater line a little bit. So let's get to that in a second, and I'm going to go finish up the dust elevators. And these are the same as they were before, except for 2 on one side now. So this one is the same. You do it 4 ticks. This is the same as, let's go over here. Oops, zoom in. The same as this circuit right here, but we turned it 90 degrees. So going to go back over to our circuit. It's 4 ticks. And because we have an extra observer, this is now 2 ticks. And this one is 4 ticks again. So this is our basic item elevator. It doesn't have a clock installed. So if I need a pulse, sorry. If I put an observer right here, and I put an item on here, you'll see it's perfectly timed just like it was before. So we get the 2 clicks and the 2 clicks. So then you may ask, how did I come up with this particular circuit? I actually got exactly to where we're at right now, and I built the hoppers on the side, and I just started futzing with this repeater ticks, hoping that it would work, and eventually I discovered that 4 ticks is actually the ideal amount of time to get your push and pull to happen. If you do 3, it actually misses the push into the hopper, or into the chest. The pulls will work fine. It will come straight down every couple of game ticks, but you need the 4 ticks for it to do the push as well. The next step that we need to do is just add a clock. And this clock is 4 ticks for the 4 ticks for that first repeater, 4 ticks for the second repeater, 4 ticks for the third repeater, and then repeat back around and have 4 ticks between the start and stop. I am not building this exactly the same way because I think that at this point you're going to be building your own sorter and doing a little bit of your own redstone design and making it a little bit your own. I'm not saying that this is the perfect design. This is just a design that I knew worked and I had tested a fair bit to be reliable. So now we have this clock going. So now we have the clock going and we get the same flashing pattern that we get on the big wall. That's actually the full item sorter. This is all of the brains of an item sorter. You theoretically could leave this clock run forever and it wouldn't click and it wouldn't do anything negative, but it's a lot of lighting updates and a lot of running redstone what doesn't need to run. So that's the item sorting module. I know you can do some new cool things with this by tiling them nice and tight. I know that there could be its own tutorial on this compacted design. That's something that we can do later if we need to. This gives you all the information that you need to modify that big sorter to be, or that big sorter to be even a bigger sorter. So the next thing that we need to talk about is how come the item elevator is built the way it is built. So this comes from looking at several item elevator designs. A number of other YouTubers have done item elevators in the past, and fundamentally what they are, let's grab a torch, a rail, I need a dropper and a comparator. Let's talk about how item elevators work. You start out with a dropper at the bottom, and then you have many droppers that go straight up to make up your item elevator. Now, what you can do, if you want, is put a bunch of items in here, and we'll go up with torches, or with levers, and we'll flip them as we go. So if I flip this lever, it will go up a couple of devices. It'll go up once for this one, and it'll go up once for this one because it is powered by that lever, and it will end up in this one. If I flip this lever, it's going to click, and it goes up. It goes up. Oh, it didn't click because it's keeping items in here. So we can crawl up this item elevator by flipping this switch, this switch, this switch, this switch, this switch, this switch, all the way up. And you see the last one fired because it is hard powered by this one, and it's clicking every time because the levers are powering the dropper above it. So now, if we go up with a block here, this is how we get it to become silent, because we can actually control what particular dropper gets the signal at a time. That's why there's these blocks here. So if I power this one, well, you're getting a click because of the lever. You can see that it just pulls the item up the chain. That's why we have this block here in our item elevator. The next thing that we can do is, if we do observers, we can actually make a chain that does this all the way up and will send the pulses perfectly timed. So if I put I can't do a lever there, so we're going to go down one. If I put a lever here, if I flip that lever, we get one item that shoots all the way up to the top and then pops out. So this works fine for getting the items up, but there's two major problems with item elevators that people generally have. The first problem is when you load and unload them, items, if they're stuck in here, they won't come out. And the reason that happens is because people use a they use a comparator clock that assumes that this will be always off except for when there is one item that gets stuck in there. Well, for my design, I did not want to make that choice, because if I assume that this is always off, the second two items get in here, the entire system breaks. And if that system breaks, then we kind of lose the entire item sorter and we get it turned off. And that's one of the things that I've worked through on other designs, is how do we get it so that, let's talk about how this item elevator works. To start with, I'm going to break it a little bit. If we have an item in this dropper, I'm going to put these red nether bricks. This comparator is on. That comparator, if you put a torch here, will turn the torch off. That means that this is actually ready to accept a clock signal, because we are doing clock signals as if the rail is on, don't send a pulse. If the rail is off, send a pulse. So here I put a torch and it sends a pulse. That pulse starts our clock because we have our turn on circuit. We're going to ignore the turn on circuit for now, but you see this one is now pulsing. And each time it pulses, it blinks the rail off, which sends an update to this one, which sends an update to this one, which sends an update to this one, which sends one item up. This one is updated at the same time as this one is, but then one tick later sends the item up one more. So that is how we make it silent, is we have a global clock that is running here. We lock the rails on when there is no items in the item elevator. See, we're locking it on so we don't get an update here. And we allow it to update when there is items in the item elevator. That means there's no funny business with clocks pausing here or breaking here, because it doesn't care if there's 1 or 50 items in there. It only cares that there's at least one item to unlock the clock. I'm using an external clock here because it was far more compact and convenient to do an external clock than it is to do a whole bunch of independent internal clocks. The second benefit of doing an external clock is I can use my master clock as my external clock, which means that I can actually pace the items going into the top to come in correctly, so we get one item at a time up here. If we get 5 or 6 items piled in up here, then either you get items trapped in the circuit, they'll be stuck in these hoppers, or what I think is even worse is you'll get skips, because there'll be too many items and it may pull twice or push twice, or it just gets weird things happening inside of this circuit. If you put one item through at a time, everything is very predictable. So that's why I've actually run the circuit like this. So now we're going to this monstrosity. Currently in this design, this monstrosity doesn't work. The way that you would make it work is by breaking out, putting a single item in this elevator, and then I'm going to take the items out of the second elevator. And you have to clear the system before you do this, but you put one item in that, and you break this torch and start a stopwatch the second you break the torch. Now, you're going to get some clicks because I have a bunch of things broken right now, but you wait for the item to go up, come back down, and light up this comparator next to it. You take that time when we get there. So now we take the time that we got, and we would keep adding comparators to this circuit until it reaches the correct amount of seconds that it stays on. Now that you have your time on how long it takes, you just add comparators to this circuit until it takes that number of seconds to fully decay. That might cause you to have to modify this circuit as well, because this circuit needs to be on for all of the time it goes this way and all the time it comes back. There's many ways to modify this. You can scoot it over one, you can build it up one. You can do a lot of things to make this circuit extend a little bit longer, but what you need to know is it's going to take a 1-tick pulse from these lines, and then it's going to power up that big comparator clock. So you can also, if you don't want to have a comparator clock, you can put a lever in up here, and instead of taking in the items via this comparator and powering up and then starting your clock, you can just put a lever and lock the clock on until you walk away. Pressure plate, it doesn't really matter. This circuit was designed just to be convenient. This circuit was designed to be convenient. It can be pulled out. It's not terrifically necessary. This is a quality of life circuit. So all you need to do is turn off this torch when you want to sort. So for instance, now this circuit will just work. It's a fully functional sorter. It just has no on-off. This is the on-off switch for it. So that is what is holding up this big monstrosity from working. Is this timing circuit needs to be fixed so that it's the right length of time for your item elevators. So next, let's talk about chaining these together. And I specifically built these two on a 90 to show that they can be built both north, south, east, west. We added the information to the tutorial that Slack's got in his channel on how to actually make sure that these rails don't snap together. This is where I learned that the rails snap together if I don't put the helper rails in. So what we learned was if you take your items out and just run it straight over into this hopper, and it has to be this hopper, you get the nice benefit of having two inputs. So if you know that you put all of your redstone components here, you can dump them over here. If you don't care and you're just going to walk away for a while, you can also put your cobblestone components in here. Close it. But if you want to kind of shortcut and have a lot more items per second going through, you can take these and you can put it in the middle right here. That's not a problem. You put it in the middle and it will work just fine. So this little bit was a Slack ad. He does it on Truly Bedrock, and it seems to work really nice for him. So if you're going to connect the two of them up, this is a nice spot to connect your hopper in. So this one uses two independent brains. It's exactly two tutorials built on different angles. But I wanted to set up, what if I only wanted one brain circuit, one timing turn on circuit? What would that look like? And for that, it's actually pretty easy. You take a pulse off of this redstone line that goes across. So this is the one that you're pacing all of your items going up and down. You carry it over, you run it to a just that little 4-3-4 circuit that we had before, and then you take pulses off of this observer line, just like, or this item elevator just like you did on the other side. Run it through a couple of repeaters and power this dust here. And then if you wanted to add another one, you just power this dust, take your signal off just like I have it here, 343, and you can daisy chain it all the way around your build. That'll work great. It does lose that benefit of having this intermediate chest to sort out of, but it does mean that you can put it in a corner just like this, nice and tight, and build a really, really dense storage system. I don't know how you'd put signs and whatever on this because it's too dense for signs. You just have to basically remember where everything's at, which kind of is scary, but I mean, you can make it in a corner just like that. For that other design, for this design over here, the one that we used an observer to power it up, you can actually bend the corner pretty easily with this one. So I'm going to leave you up to bending the corner on this one with just a little bit of redstone dust. So that's what I have prepared for you today. You got a nice couple of different ways to put these circuits together. You got an overview on how it works. Hopefully that helps you design your own item sorting systems and maybe improve on this, because this is just a concept I whipped up. I know there's room for improvement. There's probably rooms to make this faster. I've had a couple of other ideas while recording this on how to maybe speed this up in the future, and if I get those together, I'll send you an update video, and then we'll all have a better item sorting system in the future. Anyway, this is Mad Hatter. These have been my changes on the item sorter. You have a good day. Bye.